In the New Testament, the basic Greek word for glory, as in 1 Corinthians 15:40 through 41, and John 1:14, is donksha, from which we get our word doxology. Essentially, donksha refers to the attributes or true nature of a thing. It is used to describe the nature and acts of God in self-manifestation, i.e., what he essentially is and does, as exhibited in whatever way he reveals himself in these respects, and particularly in the person of Christ. Donksha is the manifested perfection of God's character, especially his righteousness, and the exhibition of his attributes and ways. The glory, donksha, of God refers to the characteristic qualities of his nature, which are best seen through the person of Jesus Christ and the lives of believers. So when we speak of the glory, kabod, or donksha of God, we are referring to the weightiness of his person and reputation, the fullness of his presence in the earth, the visible manifestation of his attributes and character, and the full expression of his nature. Wow. Glory is God putting himself on display. To put it another way, the glory of God is the full nature of God on display. That's why Psalm 19:1 says, "The heavens declare the glory of God." The Hebrew word for declare also means to show forth, and another word for show forth is display. Whenever we gaze at the splendor of the night sky above us, or soak up the beauty of the natural world around us, we see the creative quality of God on display. God is a creator by nature, and his creation displays his creativity. Creation manifests God's glory. The splendor of creation points us to God, and we attribute that characteristic quality to his nature. Again, from the pen of David, we have, "Ascribe to the Lord, O mighty ones. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of his holiness." Psalm 29:1 through 2. To ascribe something means to attribute to someone a specific action, behavior, or quality of character. Whenever we recognize a particular trait as being characteristic of someone, we consider that trait to be an attribute of that person's character or nature. Looking closely at the word attribute, we see that it means to give a tribute to someone, to offer respect, gratitude, love, or appreciation, and to acknowledge that person's worth, honor, integrity, service, and accomplishment. In a way, when we attribute something to someone, we are blaming that person for that action, but in a positive sense. When we attribute creation to God, we are blaming him for it. God is the guilty party. He alone is responsible for creation. In creation, we see the glory of the Creator. God has put himself on display. The four principles of glory in creation. There are several principles we can note about the relationship between glory and creation. The first principle is God created everything with glory. The opening verse of the Bible is a simple statement about God's basic nature. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1:1. Because God is a creator by nature, it is only natural that his creation would reflect his glory. As I've already said, glory resides in every created thing, whether on earth or in the heavens. Everything God made has its own unique glory, which reflects his glory. Birds, cats, dogs, ants, mosquitoes, trees, flowers, sun, moon, stars, each have their own unique glory. That glory is the nature of God residing in every created thing. the hidden reality that God placed in each one and which holds the full essence and potential of what that creature is supposed to be and do. This brings us to the second principle. God created everything to manifest its glory. God's original design was that every creature, by becoming everything it was created to be, would manifest its own unique glory, and by so doing, reveal God's glory. The words of the first chapter of Genesis makes this clear. Then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds." And it was so. Genesis 1:11. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark seasons and days and years, and let them be lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so. Genesis 1:14-15. And God said, "Let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky." Genesis 1:20. And God said, "Let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, creatures that move along the ground, and wild animals, each according to its kind." And it was so. Genesis 1:24. All of these things, plants, animals, birds, fish, heavenly bodies, were created to act or behave according to the nature God put into them. They were created to manifest their glory, and it was so. It is a bird's glory to fly. God created it with flight nature. God doesn't add swim to a fish. It comes with swim nature. God doesn't put moo in the cow. The cow comes with moo. That's the way God creates. The full nature of a creature, its glory, is already present when it is created. All it takes is nourishment, growth, and the right environment for that creature to fully display its glory. The third principle is that God is pleased when glory is seen. Throughout the first chapter of Genesis, we find God looking on his creation with pleasure and expressing this pleasure in the words, "and saw that it was good." After creating light, God saw that the light was good. Genesis 1:4. Each successive phase of creation, land and sea, vegetation, heavenly bodies, sea creatures and birds, and land animals, is followed by the statement, "and God saw that it was good." Genesis 1:10b, 12b, 18b, 21b, 25b. Finally, after completing creation with his crowning achievement, man, God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. Genesis 1:31a. God is pleased when his creations manifest their glory, and his, by becoming everything he created them to be. Finally, God created man as the ultimate exposure of his glory. God's purpose in creating the human race was so that we could live in fellowship with him, rule over the earth as he rules in heaven, and manifest his glory by fully displaying our own. If the lower ranks of creatures were designed to display God's glory, how much more were we? We represent the highest order of creation and the greatest masterpiece of God's artistry. If we think of God as an artist, then man is his masterpiece. The master's masterpiece. After spending 6 days speaking worlds into existence and bringing forth the lower forms of life in all their infinite variety, God prepared for the climax of his grand and divine design. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Genesis 1:26 through 28. When God set out to create man, he proposed to fashion a creature that was unique, unlike anything else he had made. These verses reveal two characteristics of man that set him apart from the rest of God's created order. First, man was created in the image of God himself. And second, he was created to have dominion over the earth and all other life on it. God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness." The Hebrew word teslim, image, also means likeness, resemblance, or representation. It is the same word used elsewhere in the Old Testament for idol. Since God is spirit and man is flesh, our likeness to him is not in physical resemblance. Rather, God has endowed us with spiritual, intellectual, and moral likeness to himself. Being created in the image of God means that he gave us his moral and spiritual nature. In other words, God created us to be like him in nature, character, and attributes. We were made to be like God in another way as well. God said, "Let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." Just as God is sovereign and rules over all his creation, he created us to have dominion over the earth, ruling it as his co-regents. By God's design, we were created for rulership. That also is what it means to be made in the image of God. Once he had finished forming the earth with all its natural resources and all its sea, plant, bird, and animal life, God said, "Now it's time to produce the manager of this planet." So he created man. The Hebrew word Adam can refer either to an individual man or to all of mankind. In Genesis 1:26 through 27, it is used in the plural sense. God created all of humankind to hold dominion over the earth. He built into us the attributes, the character, and the drive to subdue and rule the natural order. If the glory of a bird is to fly, and the glory of a fish is to swim, then the glory of man is to be like God and to rule like God in fellowship and harmony with God. Man alone was created in the image of God. It is in this built-in, God-given capacity for rulership that causes people in any culture to chafe under slavery or oppression. We were not created to be slaves, but to rule over the created order. Notice that the dominion of man includes the earth and all plant and animal life on it. Ruling over other human beings, particularly in an oppressive manner, is not within the original God-given jurisdiction of any person. Human government of laws was a necessary consequence of man's fall, instituted by God to protect the innocent and the helpless and to restrict the spread of sin. God created us uniquely in his own image, possessing his nature and glory and attributes. Since all humans were created to rule the earth under God's overall sovereignty, it would be a contradiction for him then to decree that any of us should be relegated to a life of subservience to anyone else. God is the King of creation, the Lord of the universe, and the owner of all things. He is the power of all powers, almighty, awesome, invincible, and untouchable. God is God, and he took a little part of himself and poured it out into us. That means that whatever our daddy got, we got. Everything God ever intended us to be, we already have. Virtually infinite potential hidden inside these earthly bodies. God created us to have dominion over the earth. Anything less squanders our potential. All creation displays God's glory, but only man was made in God's image. Birds display God's glory, but they were not created in his image. Plants display God's glory, but they were not created in his image. The earth displays God's glory, but it was not created in his image. Of all the created order, man alone possesses the spirit and capacity to subdue the earth and rule over it. In man alone resides the image of God, the unique stamp of our Creator that sets us apart from every other creature. In the art world, art critics and experts are always on the lookout for imitations. To the amateur and the untrained eye, a fake can easily be mistaken for a genuine masterpiece. Art forgers are that skillful. An expert, however, can readily identify a genuine original. For someone who knows what to look for, the telltale characteristics of any particular master are unmistakable in his or her work. In financial institutions, tellers and others who regularly handle large amounts of money are trained to recognize counterfeit currency. They learn this skill not by studying examples of counterfeit bills, but by studying the genuine article. Once they have thoroughly learned what the real thing looks like, they can easily identify a fake when they see it. Human beings are God's representatives on earth. He created us in his image. We are not fake imitations. We are genuine masterpieces painted by the hand of the master artist. We are not counterfeits, but the genuine article. No other creature in all creation has that distinction. Sin has distorted God's image and hidden it away under a lot of worldly junk. So we are hard to identify as God's originals. He has the power to dig down and cut through the junk to expose the glory, the telltale characteristics of his hand that hides in each of us. He wants to display us as the masterpieces we are. That's why his glory is so important. Nothing is more important than the glory of God. After all my years of Bible study, seminary training, preaching, and teaching, and after all the books I've read, I've come to the conclusion and conviction that nothing is more important than the glory of God. Everything in creation, plants, animals, birds, fish, the oceans, the mountains, the multiplied millions of stars within our own galaxy, the millions of galaxies scattered throughout the infinite expanse of space, was designed with God's glory in mind. God is a creator, and creativity cries out for expression. So, God created a vast universe through which to express himself. All of creation exists to express, to reveal, to display, and to manifest the glory of God. If the most important thing to God is his glory, it is also the most important thing to us, who were created to live with him and rule under him as stewards of the earth. We were created to expose God's glory, but in a way different from the rest of creation. God's original and unchanging desire was for man to expose his glory in a way that no other creature could. That's why he created us in his image. God designed human beings to be the ultimate expression in creation of who He is and what He is like. We are unique. Not even the angels in heaven were created in God's image. We can fulfill our purpose as carriers and exposers of God's glory only as long as we live in the right environment and maintain the right relationship with Him. The religious answer to the question, why did God create us, is to worship Him. Our true purpose is to display God's glory. That, however, is what true worship is all about. Worship is not something we go to on Sunday or Saturday or Friday or whenever. Worship is a state that we should remain in all the time. Perfect worship is living continually in the presence of God, the proper environment, and enjoying continual fellowship with God, the proper relationship. God created us for intimacy with Him. That's what worship is, an ongoing intimate relationship with God. From the very beginning, God provided both the proper environment and the proper relationship in which the humans He had created could thrive and fully express their glory as beings living and working in harmony with Him. At the same time, they would manifest the glory of God by becoming everything He created them to be. Sin marred both the environment and the relationship. Man failed to realize His glory and thus distorted the image of God in which he was made. God's glory was so important to him, He would do whatever was necessary to protect it. God's love for His highest creation was so great that He would do whatever was necessary to restore sinful man to his original position of intimate relationship in the environment of His Creator's presence. Principles. Number 1. Glory resides in every created thing. Number 2. The glory of God is the full nature of God on display. Number 3. God created everything with glory. Number 4. God created everything to manifest its glory. Number 5. God is pleased when glory is seen. Number 6. God created us to expose His glory. Number 7. The glory of man is to be like God and to rule like God in fellowship and harmony with God. Number 8. All creation displays God's glory, but only man was made in God's image. Number 9. Nothing is more important than God's glory. Number 10. Perfect worship is living continually in the presence of God and enjoying continual fellowship with God.